Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first September council meeting. I am not the person you expect to see here. Mayor Del Isla sends her regrets. She was not feeling 100% tonight, and as she loves her community enough to always want to dedicate 100% whenever she has the opportunity, she has yielded this evening to me. So she will be back next week, but in the meantime, welcome. We're all glad you're here. If you are able, please rise and direct your attention to Councilman Emerson for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Would you please pray with me? Father, I was reminded this week of your servant, John McCain. Father, we say words like honor and sacrifice, and they're so easy to say, but yet so hard to live by. And I think sometimes, Father, in the midst of serving you here, just on this council, Father, we think we first look maybe at the sacrifice we're making, Father, but it's such an honor we have. Those men who were over there, Father, rotting in the jungle, they would have loved to have had the opportunity to serve like we are. So, Father, I just ask that, as Senator McCain showed us, Father, that we put the needs of our nation, Father, and indeed the world above any petty politics we may have, Father, or predisposed notions we may have. And Father, while we sometimes have to compromise with each other to solve problems, I ask that we never compromise our ideals. So Father, as we close tonight, I just think of the ultimate sacrifice of your Son, Jesus Christ, made on the cross for us. And I just ask that you give us wisdom to live up to that sacrifice, Father. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There are two presentations this evening. Mr. City Manager, if you would introduce the first one.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Tonight we have Jason Peak here, our Public Works Director, to give us a quarterly report on Public Works.
Good evening, governing body. This is our second quarter report on Public Works projects, and just would like to tell you about the success we're having this year. We have 11 projects that are currently under construction, major projects around town, and all of these are on track to meet their completion dates. So it's just continued process improvement that we have going on. The other thing that I wanted to highlight this evening is last year the governing body authorized additional general fund money towards the pavement management program. We recently have, this presentation was submitted back in August, so that's why you're still seeing some bid dates there, but we've recently received bids and awarded 4 projects to encumber that general fund money. These will be mill and overlay projects basically in the neighborhood, so that's part of our pavement management program, putting to work those dollars to do rehab. We also have 2 projects that we've awarded through the countywide program, and what I'd say these are some interim projects. Southwest 17th Street, of course, encompasses 3 miles. That westernmost mile is probably in the worst shape of that project. So we're actually going to do what we call interim mill and overlay. That basically will put that road in a better ride condition while we go through the planning, utility relocation, design process to deliver that project. And then we're also doing a similar process on Southwest 37th from Burlingame to Kirklawn. And Southwest 37th is kind of in the out years of the countywide sales tax, so there'll be several years before we actually start on the design work of that. As part of our kind of 3-year process, you know, in 1 year we're doing design, second year sometimes we're out to construction or doing right-of-way utility relocation. We've got approximately 8 projects that are in design that will be under construction in 2019. One of those we'll talk about in a minute is our crack sealing microsurfacing year 2 project. And then we have 6 projects that have already been completed in 2018. A couple of these were multi-year projects that carried over from 2017, but some of them were new projects. For example, the Southwest Fairlawn at I-470. This is our first flashing yellow traffic signal, which you'll probably be seeing more of in the future to help with traffic progression. And that was installed in advance of the 29th and Fairlawn construction project. So highlight a couple of photos here. Southwest 6th, this is looking basically from Gage to Fairlawn. We've got all the base paving down between Gage and Fairlawn. That's allowing the contractor to install the curb, basically so we can meet schedule, get the paving done on that, as well as the work behind that. And I think this project just speaks to how we've improved our utility coordination process. As I told you when I started here, it's about to take us 3 years to kind of revamp our process, so we're seeing the fruits of that labor. We had a pretty extensive utility coordination that helped us resolve any field conflicts in a timely manner. Next project to kind of highlight is Southeast Adams. This is looking basically south at the intersection of 29th, looking back up the hill. The project this year will go from 29th to 33rd, and then next year we'll do from 33rd to 37th, and that's full depth replacement. And then the last photo to kind of highlight is our Central Park neighborhood project. This was part of the citywide half-cent sales tax program. The last years we've been working in residential neighborhoods, and this includes a mixture of different work from curb and gutter replacement, brick street patching and repairs, as well as some mill and overlay. And we've also had a neat little part of that project where we salvaged, there's cast iron curb around the actual Central Park, and we salvaged that curb and are reinstalling it, as well as we quote-unquote harvested some other cast iron curb that was over by the jail and kind of buried. We found that in our records to make sure that we could kind of complete that and keep with the character of that neighborhood. So really appreciate the work staff's done on that. The last thing I was going to bring up picture-wise, but our video is not working, was talk about microsurfacing. I know you're probably getting a number of questions or emails from your constituents about, hey, this rough black surface that the city's putting down, they didn't do a right job out there. Well, the first thing I want to tell you is we are doing the right job. It has a little rougher surface than a normal asphalt overlay. It's different treatment. We're working with Molly, and we'll be doing some media output and PSAs to tell folks about this microsurfacing product. It's basically a full width surface seal. This buys us an additional 5 to 7 years of pavement life. It's what you approved through the countywide excess sales tax funds, and this year we're doing 83 lane miles. The bid prices, we budgeted for 75. We got good bid prices, so we're able to add some additional mileage. And I think this is a key process of improving our streets. So we're very excited about it, and you'll see a lot of it on town. I mean, one of the most noticeable areas, I think, is in front of the Capitol there on Southwest 10th. Looks like this new asphalt overlay, but it's really only about 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick. As traffic rides on the surface, it really kind of smooths it out. So when it goes down, it does have that rough appearance, but the traffic actually is what will make it smoother. And then lastly, just to kind of provide you, this is looking at only 2018 CIP funds. So out of the 20, and this is all projects, not just street projects, basically our GEO bond, federal fund exchange, citywide and countywide projects. Got a CIP budget of a little over $27 million. Of that budget, we have 24% basically spent through the second quarter. We had 53% encumbered and a balance of 24% remaining. And so it's just us being aggressive and getting our projects out, looking through second quarter. As we come into third quarter, you'll see the expenses go up, encumbrances go down, and a little bit of that remaining balance drop. And with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, Dr. B. Could you talk just real briefly about what kind of road surface you can micro seal? Does it have to be completely flat and, free of any sort of potholes or that sort of thing?
No, not, basically, we're not going to do poor streets that would require significant patching, because that will ultimately reflect back through the microsurfacing. It's not a structural pavement application, so it's not going to fix bumps or ride quality in the road. It's basically a sealant, so it seals the entire surface. We try to target roads that are in the good into the fair category with the microsurfacing.
So basically, only streets with small cracks and fissures would be a candidate for microsurfacing, as everything else needs further
Yeah,
structural.
9 times out of 10, that's going to be the process.
Excellent. Well, I've had numerous comments about how much people like the microsurface approach. That seems to be fairly popular in places where that's been done. So congrats to you and your team. Other comments for Dr. Peak? Questions? Mr. Mays.
Thanks, Dr. Peak. I wanted to comment also, I saw that the 37th Street from Burlingame to Kirkland had been added to the list, and I saw they put the cones out there today. I'm pretty excited about that. I drive on that road pretty much every day. And then I also wanted to ask about the brick restoration things. I know that in the past they put asphalt patches in the brick. Is part of the restoration to remove all of that?
In select locations where we do have existing brick streets designated for preservation, we've communicated to our utility companies they need to restore those with brick. In the past, those had been filled with asphalt. So the practice is more to do the brick street repair.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Ms. Heller.
I just want to compliment you. It's nice to see it developing. I appreciate the explanation about the microsurfacing, because with all the streets that are really in disrepair, seeing a new surface go on one that's in pretty good repair, that helps us to answer why. Also, and I got microsurfaced right in front of my house, so I'm one of those people that asked one of those contractors a question or two. And they've been great. They've reports from constituents who have approached your folks, and I would add utility folks into that. What's happening, what's going on, explain. Whether it's our city people or your contractors, they've been great. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Thank you, Dr. Peak.
All right.
Mr. Chow, the second presentation, if you'd like.
Yes, our second presentation tonight is to be given by Deputy Director Braxton Copley. He'll present our utilities quarterly report tonight.
Good evening, governing body. We do have several big projects under construction right now. Collie Creek, we are actually on budget and slightly ahead of schedule. We hope to get that buttoned up before the November 1st contract deadline. Crane, we're going great guns in terms of boring under the BNSF yard and have made the award on the west part of the project. And then 29th Street and over by Aquarian Acres. We are in construction on that. This is just a reminder that all of our utilities projects are out on the portal. So the members of the public can just go to the city website, go to the portal, and get a snapshot of where we are in terms of the project. As you can see, the project budget of $2.2 million is listed, and then we have our project end date of June of 2019, and we are definitely ahead of schedule on that, and the county is very happy about that because they want to get going on their project. And what really led to the Aquarian Acres project was the county informed us that they were going to be doing a major widening of 29th Street from Croco over to the Turnpike. And this gave us an opportunity to relocate our water line. We had some pretty bad breaks over on the west section over by West Edge Road. And it also allowed us two opportunities. One was there had been a break several years ago at 29th and Aquarius Drive. And so basically all of Aquarian Acres only had a single feed off of Croco. And so as part of this project, and I know it was extremely frustrating for Councilmember Emerson with all the calls and emails that he got when we had Aquarius Drive closed, but we were able to bore and make a connection there. So when we finish this project, we will have a loop connection. And then we had also lost many years ago, we'd lost the connection under 470. And so we were not able to communicate from our California tower over to the Croco Tower. And we will be, as part of this project, reinstituting that, so that will give us a loop system. In design, a couple of big transmission main projects, Indian Hills, and then straight going from Seward down to the new Norwood Pump Station, East Filter, and our Soldier Creek Booster Pump Station. And then our wastewater projects under construction. We're moving on the North Tyler Pump Station. That's up there by the Y in North Topeka. And then the project that we're really happy about is our wastewater lining and replacement program. And so we've been several years trying to get off the ground, and have finally been able to get through all of the hurdles, and we've gotten going. Basically just shy of 5 miles of collection line we're going to be lining, and we're also going to be either replacing or rehabbing over 100 manholes. So get started hopefully by the end of September. And the big question is, well, why? Why do the lining? Why go this route? Well, this first phase that we're doing, which encompasses 2 areas, which is over by Highcrest and then 33rd and Twilight Drive, our average cost, including the manholes, is about $42 a lineal foot. If I was doing open trench replacement of sanitary sewer line, I use $200 a lineal foot. So tremendous savings in terms of our stretching our resources out, but also really minimizes the impact on the residents, because we don't have these extensive excavations in the alleys. And how do I?
It's this one.
Yes. And this is a short video about what cured-in-place lining is, because not everyone in the council or at home.
Institution's flagship cured-in-place pipe technology, or CIPP, is a pipe within a pipe, installed without digging. Resin-saturated, coated felt tubing is inverted or pulled into the existing pipe. Hot water or steam is then circulated throughout the tubing, curing the resin and forming a tight-fitting, jointless, corrosion-resistant pipe within the pipe. Service levels are then restored using a robotically controlled cutting device. Finally, the rehabilitated pipe is fully inspected by closed-circuit TV. In-situ-form's trenchless technology is the world's most trusted pipe rehabilitation solution.
And in addition to the pipelining that we're doing, we're also doing a lot of in-place manhole restoration.
Is this the other video?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
And this is an example of how the restoration for in-place manholes operates.
The cause of long-term deterioration in brick and concrete manholes is due to the effects of high levels of hydrogen sulfide gas or sewage. Microbes metabolize the H2S, producing sulfuric acid. The acid eats away at concrete and mortar, degrading the integrity of the substrate. Further problems in manhole deterioration are leaking manhole rings, subsidence from traffic loading, stress from groundwater cycle loading, infiltration through precast joints, infiltration through loose and/or cracked mortar, cracks caused by shifting and expanding soil, leaks at pipe penetration. A visual assessment of the structure can determine the best means to clean and prep the surface. Water blasting or abrasive blasting may be required to prepare a proper surface profile. Surfaces not properly cleaned and abraded may compromise the reliability of the lining. Proper repair, patching, and subsequent reprofiling of damaged surfaces is sometimes required for severely deteriorated structures. Once cleaned, damage is assessed and repairs are made to cracks, voids, and bug holes. The surface may require a complete restoration in which a cementitious underlayment is applied. The structure is coated with Raven 405 100% solids epoxy using a spray technique called cross-hatching or boxing to ensure even coverage and mill thickness. Application thickness can range from 80 to 125 mils or more in one application. Mill gauging, spark testing, and pull testing are used to ensure proper application thickness and adhesion of the lining to the structure.
And then in addition to the projects that we have under construction, we have a couple of significant projects in design, not the least of which are the Ash Street Force Main and then the Wanamaker Force Main. You may have seen there have been a couple of articles in the last month. We've had 2 breaks on that Wanamaker Force Main. We are in design on that. That will be replacement of approximately 10,000 lineal feet of what's currently 18-inch DIP, and we're going to be going back with a PVC high pressure rated, like a C900, so that will withstand that hydrogen sulfide that they were just talking about, which is so deleterious on metals and concrete. On the stormwater side, making a lot of progress on our levee project. The contractor did run across some creosote contaminated soil as part of the excavation for the work on the piers to support the flood wall. And it took us about 2 months to get through all the testing of that. But we did finally get the change order through the Corps. It's going to add about 60 days onto the overall project schedule that was initially scheduled to end in July of 2020. So now that's been pushed out to September of 2020. But this is a great contractor. While he was waiting on all of that work, the testing, he jumped over and got on the under seepage berm that he's also going to be building under this contract. And so we constructed about 600 feet of under seepage berm. Here's a picture of the track hoe actually doing that excavation of that creosote lining. But the contractor was able to put himself to work during that time and got us knocked out on the under seepage berm on the north side. And we were planning to hydro-seed that this week, but Mother Nature is going to get in our way. Last thing we want to do is put down a lot of seed and then have it wash into the river. So stay tuned on that. And then Dr. Peek had showed his summary slide, which was basically just a snapshot of 2018. I believe that it's a better story for us and it's more accurate and more transparent for you to see what we have right now in the CIP that you guys have approved, that we have out there that we're either in planning, design, or construction on. And you see the $156 million total of all of our projects in the CIP across the 3 utilities. And we've about 21 million either spent or encumbered. And then we have 133 remaining. Obviously, we've got some big ticket items in there. The 22 million for the biogas and the solids handling, 17 million for Wanamaker Force Main, 10 million for the Ash Street Force Main. They're all in design. There's extremely challenging projects, take a lot of time for design, but then once we get going, you'll see these numbers start to drop down. So with that, I will gladly stand for any questions that the governing body has.
Other questions for Mr. Copley? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Copley, A lot of people I guess my fellow council members have asked me about all the line breaks we've had this year. And can you just briefly explain how the city has changed their policy on the size? You're using more C900 now. Would you mind just explaining that, please?
Yep, absolutely. And we are over 600 breaks this year. Last year at the same time, we were about 250. A lot of that is a product of great demands on our system during extremely dry conditions. We have soil that are shifting. We do have some areas that have corrosive soil, which is what Councilmember Emerson's point was. This year, we took a very hard look at what we've been doing in terms of PVC pipe versus ductile iron pipe. And we made a decision to go with up to 16 inches now that will be PVC pipe, which stands up much better in corrosive soil. And then on the larger diameter, 20-inch and 24-inch, that will be up to our design consultant as to whether they believe that it's in our best interest to go with PVC or DIP. In cases where they are equal alternates, then we will all bid those and we will go with the what's going to be best for the city. We still remain committed on our large diameter pipe, which would basically be 30 inches and more in transmission, so 30, 36, and 48. I believe ductile iron pipe is a better product. It's much higher tensile strength. We have much less reduction in flow because the wall thickness is less than the PVC. However, with that said, that DIP does need to be coated with the zinc coating, and it does need to be bedded in rock, and it also has to be poly-wrapped. And so those are all part of our specifications to make sure that what we're putting in the ground now will give us that estimated service life of the 80 to 100 years, which the pipe manufacturers firmly cling to. So we do learn from our mistakes and the mistakes of our forefathers, and basically are making smarter decisions now so that we don't run into these issues where we have 30 and 40-year-old pipe. Colley Creek is a perfect example. 30-plus-year-old pipe, 55 breaks, and 3,000 lineal feet. I mean, that pipe should have lasted 80 to 100 years, but it was directly bedded in clay soil.
Wow. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Braxton, a couple things on that Colley Creek project. I've heard a lot of really good things from the neighbors over there. I know there was an incident where a sewer line was broken, and it was like 9 o'clock on a Sunday, and the city crew was out there within like an hour. I mean, it was fantastic. Now, also, I wanted to just sort of ask on the ductile iron pipe versus PVC. About what percentage of our breaks are ductile iron versus PVC?
That's a great question. I would just say off the top of my head, a very small percentage of the breaks that we're seeing are in the PVC. I would certainly say less than 10% and maybe closer to 5%.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. Hi, Braxton. So that's called the ductile iron that goes down right in the pipe?
You were talking about the video? Mm-hmm. That is the cured in place pipe.
Okay, cured in place pipe, okay. What is, is there a warranty on that? Like, what is the?
Well, as we all know, manufacturers make very bold claims.
Right.
What we're told is we should reasonably expect a 50-year service life out of a newly lined pipe.
So when you say newly,
correct.
That's put in after we've placed it in?
Yes, ma'am.
And then we go through and fill it in? Like the video showed?
Yes. So they insert the sleeve, they expand it using steam or hot water, so then it cures because of that, and then it basically forms a new pipe inside the shell of the old vitrified clay pipe.
Okay. What did we do at 5th and Van Buren? We had old pipe in there.
Yes, ma'am. 5th and Van Buren is a two-part solution to that. The first phase that we did was we went in and repaired. That was an old, large diameter brick sewer line. And what we did was we placed a new manhole over where that big hole was. And then the second phase of that will be lining that entire section of it using either the cured-in-place pipe, or it may be a centrifugally cast concrete. We're still waiting for our design engineers to come back with what is the best solution of that. So that part is still in design.
Okay, because I remember you saying we put a sleeve in there, and that's why I was thinking that was that, kind of, sort of.
We did have to use some corrugated metal pipe to help give us some structure to that because we lost the shoulder.
Right.
But that was intended just to be that and the manhole, just to be the starting point, but we knew all along that we were going to have to come in and line a considerable length of that to actually give us that structural integrity, as well as to protect that old brick from all that hydrogen sulfide that wants to basically eat that away. And so it'll be, you know, whether it's cured in place or some other type of in situ form lining.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Appreciate the report. On to the clerk for the roll call.
Deputy Mayor Jensen.
Present.
Council members Hiller.
Here.
Clear. Ortiz. Here. Emerson.
Here.
Padilla.
Here.
Mays.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
And Lesser.
Here. Now go back to the clerk for appointments.
A is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Helen Crowe to the Topeka Board of Zoning Appeals to file an unexpired term ending December 2, 2021. B is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Neil Dobler to the Metropolitan Topeka Airport Authority Board for an unexpired term ending December 2, 2021. C is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Casey Williams to the Topeka Sustainability Advisory Board for a term ending September 5, 2020.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second? There's a motion and a second. All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no.
Let me try this again. There we go.
Dun, 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 dun.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes. If you all are in the audience, if you'd please stand. I don't see Helen or Neil. Is Casey out there? Thank you so much. On to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to call on Ms. Ortiz to add an item on the behalf of Ms. Clear.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The mayor would have never forgot that. I'd like to make a motion to add an item on the agenda, and what it is we had voted to approve classic movie nights in Noto, and they've had one, and they've seen that they started selling alcohol beverages at a certain time, and they wanted to bump the time up. So what I'm trying to do is amend it, I think. I don't know if that's correct, but so we can amend the time to 6 o'clock, and so I wanted to add this on the agenda. So I'll make that motion.
If there are no objections, we will add it.
Okay. Where are we at it?
It would be item F.
Thank you.
With that, back to the clerk.
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller granting Topeka Community Cycle Project an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at C. B is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller granting Downtown Topeka Foundation an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at C concerning noise prohibitions. C is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sylvia Ortiz granting El Shaddai Ministries an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at C concerning noise prohibitions. D are minutes of the regular meeting of August 21, 2018. There is one application staff is requesting approval. It's for an open after midnight license for Gage Bowl located at 4200 Southwest Huntoon Street. And then F is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sandra Clear approving a special event known as the Classic Movie Nights in Noto and rescinding and conflicting portions of resolution number 9031.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read? We have a motion and a second by the mics. All those in favor, please vote yes.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved. On to action items, the clerk would read.
A is a public hearing to consider the advisability of establishing a community improvement district for the Cyrus Hotel located at 912 to 924 South Kansas Avenue, and an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout establishing a community improvement district, CID, for the Cyrus Hotel located at 912 to 924 South Kansas Avenue, levying a CID sales tax of 2% within the CID.
Mr. Deputy City Manager.
Go ahead.
Deputy Mayor, thank you. This evening, we have 2 action items, one action item, but 2 subparts of the item associated with this. The first, as noted by the clerk, is a public hearing, and then the second is council action on an ordinance which would establish a CID district for the Cyrus Hotel. So for the benefit of this body, just a refresher, and those folks watching at home, a refresher on what is a CID. Stands for Community Improvement District. It's a state economic development tool, which is used by the city. We follow state statute, of course, but we also have our own policies adopted, I think, in 2011 by this body, and that governs how we implement CIDs. Basically, it's an incremental tax which is captured in a specific area, and then that incremental tax is used to offset approved development expenses given back to the developer to help offset approved development expenses. There's generally 2 kinds of CIDs. The first is a pay-as-you-go, which is the kind preferred by this body as well as our policy, which is essentially the developer makes payments on the expenses and then is reimbursed. Less common with this body and frankly across the state of Kansas is actually the city issues bonds and then uses the CID proceeds to pay debt on those bonds. We've been through the background on this, but just very briefly, we've been having conversations with the Cyrus folks over the course of the last year or so about setting another CID district for them. As you know, they have a current 1% district, which was set a couple of years ago by this body. Now, the intent is to develop a new district, which is 2% instead of 1%. We went through this about a month ago when this body set the public hearing date for this particular procedure. In your packet this evening is the development agreement. We're not asking for action on that. It's just good background information for you. Ultimately, the city manager will sign and administer that agreement, but a couple things I would point out to you. It is similar in all material respects, really, except for 2, to the previous development agreement. The first difference is that the original development agreement had a $4 million cap on the amount of CID taxes that could be captured. This particular agreement is a $5 million cap, so it's an increase of $1 million in captured revenues. And then the second major difference is that one of you suggested a while ago in relationship to some of the issues they've had across the state, particularly our neighbors to the east, maybe that we put some better reporting language in there that requires the developer to certify the expenses are accurate, and that we were able to look at those expenses in a little more detail so that we don't run into the same kind of situation that they had in Lawrence Hotel Development Project. So those are, 2 minutes worth of brief comments from me. I would note in the audience, Lucky DeFries and Seth Wagner are here. And I believe Seth would like to make a couple comments before the public hearing with your consent, Deputy Mayor. That's fine. Okay.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, Mr. City Manager, Assistant City Manager, members of the council, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. I've probably spent about 7 minutes in my desk today, so my remarks may be a little bit more read than rehearsed. It's been a very busy Tuesday here. Since AIM Strategies was formed in late 2014 with the vision of improving downtown Topeka and improving the quality of life in Topeka, we've explored and cherished the public-private partnership with the city that we knew would make our projects viable and lasting. Cody and I were very thankful to Doug Gerber reaching out to us in November of 2017 when the 2% CID for wheat fields was approved. 2% was our original ask for this project back in 2016, and we are very thankful for the council's willingness to consider a 2% CID when presented with a project like wheat fields, like the Cyrus Hotel, that is seen as a transformational option for different parts of Topeka. The Cyrus Hotel is in its home stretch. We are very excited for what it's going to bring to Topeka and what people are going to see here in a few months. December 16th is coming up very, very quickly. It's kind of a little bit surreal for me. It's been a long process since 2015 that this is started. But it's not only AIM, it's other companies, it's other community leaders that have invested in this hotel and that have a lot of skin in the game. It really truly is the crown jewel of $35 million of investment that we're going to have on Kansas Avenue by the end of 2018. For the other projects that we have on Kansas Avenue, we have not asked for any tax incentives of this type. However, the success of this project in particular is critical, not only for Topeka, but for future investment in Topeka. We want the Cyrus Hotel to succeed so other people will come in and invest in downtown Topeka, invest in Topeka in general, and really sponsor the additional quality of life initiatives that the city needs. The public-private partnership that we have formed over these last few years is the beginning of what can be done to set the example for Topeka's future. We're excited for the next 6 months. We're excited for the next 6 years. We're excited for the growth in downtown Topeka and all areas of Topeka. This is a unique and exciting period of transition for Topeka. I just wanted to thank you all for your critical roles in making this happen.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we will proceed to the public hearing. We will now declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to speak about this item? Anybody wishing to speak about this item? Going once? Third time. Anybody wishing to speak? Okay. Seeing no comments, we will declare the public hearing closed and go back to Mr. Gerber.
Deputy Mayor, I don't have any further comments, but I'm certainly glad to stand for questions as needed.
Any questions? Ms. Heller.
I do not have questions, but I would be happy to move approval of the proposal.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Cohen. All those in favor, please vote yes. Opposed, vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the motion passes. On to item B, if the clerk would read.
Good job, Doug.
B is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout supporting the City of Topeka's application for funding from the Kansas Department of Transportation for a pedestrian bridge on 10th Street and sidewalk improvements to Topeka Boulevard from 29th to 37th.
Mr. Trout?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Governing body, tonight, Planning Director Bill Finder will go through what is information related to a transportation alternatives grant that we'd like for your consideration and approval.
Thank you. Good evening, governing body. Tonight is as mentioned, a resolution before you of support for a transportation alternatives grant to KDOT. Every year or two, a round of grant money that actually is a pass-through from the federal level through the state at KDOT for
what is really multimodal forms of transportation, bikes, pedestrians, transit. All of our major bikeways or trails work in the past has come through this program. And so this year they've come out again with another round. This will be for 2020. We're not sure when there would be another round, so we like to take advantage of these. We have a couple of plans in place, our pedestrian master plan, our bikeways master plan. We have a complete streets advisory committee. We consult with our public works department, and we come to some priorities based on those inputs. So I'll go over the two requests or the grants applications we want to submit. Again, just a reminder, this is an 80-20 program, so we're asking for 80% of the total project cost as part of this grant. This is a significant help, and these are very expensive projects throughout our past. These would not have gone in without this program. So the two projects, one's pretty ambitious. Our Topeka Boulevard project, South Topeka Boulevard from 29th to 37th. That is, as many of you know, a former state highway, Highway 75. It was left or conveyed to the city to take over for maintenance at some point here in the not too distant past. A lot of right-of-way, except they did not leave us with any sidewalks. That's a mile-long corridor. About 25% of that corridor has sidewalks. So we are coming back with an infill sidewalk project. We're also teaming up with Metropolitan Topeka Transit Authority. The transit folks have already gone in and started to put in bus stops and shelters. We would be also we would also be planning to connect the sidewalks to the transit stops. If you're out there now, there's a couple that really don't go anywhere. And so we are hoping that we will complete those connections. We're also going to complete the connections on the side streets, 29th Street. There's nothing along 29th Street as you go east and west of Topeka Boulevard. So we'll connect going east and west there, 31st Street as well. We've broken this down into phases. We don't realistically expect to get the entire ask that we have here for this mile-long stretch. So at KDOT's advice, we broke it down into 3 phases. We hope to at least achieve the first phase from 29th to 31st would be our priority. That all told would be roughly about a $500,000 ask of KDOT. About a $650,000 project. We would also, this does not include at this point trees. We'd also be asking to put in trees for there's nothing out there right now. There are some significant costs with retaining walls and replacing driveways to get the slope correct. That is what's driving a lot of this cost. So on our own, this would take 3 years, more than 3 years of our current infill sidewalk money to complete this project. So we are hoping that we can stretch that as much as we can. And so anyway, that is probably our most ambitious ask. It is. The second project has to do with 10th Street. And a smaller project. It's mainly involving a pedestrian bridge or a multi-use path bridge just east of Wanamaker. As many of you know, 10th Street has been, in the last few years, has completed a multi-use path on the north side of 10th Street between Gage and Fairlawn. We are planning a continuation, or in the CIP, we have a 10th Street widening between Fairlawn and Wanamaker. As part of that would also be a multi-use path. However, we need to cross a water channel close to Wanamaker, and that was not included in the original cost estimates. It's part of our vestige of how we were doing complete streets in the past, where we'd come and have a project presented to our complete streets folks and our committee. We'd make recommendations, but something this significant is very difficult to fund when that has not been planned for. So in the future, we're doing those recommendations more on the front side, so that can be built into your cost when you put it in, when we put it into the CIP. So our hope here is to get this. This is about $180,000 total project. We're asking for about $150,000 of that, and basically, this is part of our overall bikeways master plan. If we didn't have this, we have a protected bikeways from Wanamaker to Gage Park, ultimately on 8th Street all the way downtown. If we don't, this would be the one part that we would not have protected, meaning folks would come out into the street. This is a very hazardous arterial for that purpose. So with that in mind, this is a safety issue as well. So those are an overview of our two projects, Topeka Boulevard and the 10th Street project. So we would ask for your support. The applications are due next week.
Thank you, Mr. Finder. Are there any questions? Mr. Emerson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Finder, just a question. First of all, I think both these projects are needed. But I have a question on like the Topeka Boulevard project. Why would we put sidewalks on both sides? I mean, if we don't get the grant, would we consider just putting sidewalks on one side initially?
I think we'd have to look at, yes, ratcheting down the phasing just to fit it in. We have the pedestrian plan kind of outlines. We're going from neighborhood to neighborhood with those high demand areas for pedestrians. And if we did all of Topeka Boulevard, we would forego some of those neighborhoods right now. And so, yeah, we would definitely have to ratchet it down and look at different types of phasing. Definitely need it on both sides of the street, so we wouldn't want to do just one side, but in terms of as our ultimate build out, we want both sides, but we may have to go one side if we don't get this funding for the time being. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Ms. Hiller.
I just want to give some kudos to staff. For one thing, it's just been fun. This is now my 10th year on the council to see the kind of planning evolve as it has. And of course, you got ahead of me, but we want to see people from Wanamaker be able to bike all the way downtown and get to District 1. And it's great to see that infill. Also, for those who weren't around, I've served on both the MTPO as well as the complete, what's now Complete Streets, so those transportation advisory groups. And if I recall correctly, when this Topeka Boulevard one first came out and people were looking at moving it forward, staff was just overwhelmed because there is also a tremendous amount of utility issues on the corners and big traffic signals and things like that, and people just flat couldn't figure out how to do it. And so the fact that you've stuck with it and you utilized our resources and come up with a plan that you think is now possible to do is to your great credit. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Bill, maybe you said this and I missed it. When do you anticipate we'll find out if we get any of these grants?
Councilmember Mays, we would find out by the end of this year.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that's pretty quick.
so 19 design, 20 construction is probably what we're looking at.
Okay, great, thank you.
Excellent. Other comments? Questions? Seeing none, is there a motion? The motion, is there a second? Second. All those in favor vote yes.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the motion is approved. On to item C, if the clerk would read.
Language. Do you want me to read it? No. Yeah. Okay. C is action to create a committee to consider the similar underlying issues associated with the camping ordinance and the traffic and pedestrian safety ordinance, which will consist of 5 governing body members: Deputy Mayor Jensen, Councilmember Ortiz, Councilmember Clear, Councilmember Lesser, and Councilmember Padilla, as well as 5 members of the community to be appointed by Deputy Mayor Jensen and Councilmember Ortiz.
So it's always kind of awkward to call on yourself. As many of you know, we've been working extensively on 2 issues in our community and what we as the community and the governing body can do about those. And as Councilwoman Ortiz and I have talked, we realize that a lot of the underlying causes of these 2 items generally overlap and quite extensively. And so in the interest of all of the partners that have come to the table to help us with this, we would like to combine the efforts of both teams to try to sort out what we can do with the folks that are displaced from either one of these ordinances or that are just stuck in a bad spot in life. So our proposal is to leave the ordinance work parked in the 2 committees as it sits now, but we would take the work that both are doing to try and address the issue of homelessness and the issue of poverty and pull that into one consolidated effort and continue working with the homeless task force, the housing authority, and that sort of thing. We pull that work together to try and sort out what we can really do as a community to effectively move the needle in this area, to see how we need to come together as a city and as the nonprofit community to try and help these folks. So with that, I'll stand for questions, or in this case, sit. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So the separate committees would continue to work, but this joint committee would come together just to work on poverty and homelessness solutions?
Well, sort of. So the ordinance work, actually reviewing the language in the proposal submitted, would remain in the committees because those are 2 separate things. But rather than each separate committee work to try and address the root cause of homelessness and poverty, that work would get pulled out of those 2 committees and combined into this new one. And so each committee on its own would essentially only work on the ordinances that are in existence now, that have been proposed. And then we would pull the rest of the work out and put it on this other committee. And for the most part, those other 2 committees, as I understand, or at least I know for ours, for example, a lot of the work on the ordinance is done. And we're working on what can we do to try and address the fallout that ordinance would create and work with the folks that are trapped in that unfortunate circumstance. And we realize that both committees are essentially going to start working on the same thing as we try to sort out what to do about that. So the ordinance work would stay in the existing committees, but we would take the work that they're trying to do to address the fallout from those and combine that and work on that as a team, as opposed to having 2 separate but parallel efforts.
And if I may,
Yes,
are
ma'am.
both committees agreeable to that?
I can speak for mine, and I'll defer to Councilwoman Ortiz, but she and I have talked extensively about teaming up to try and create serious impact in the community.
Thank you.
So, other questions, comments?
Are you going to let her answer?
Would you like to?
Sure, I think we looked at a lot of the same people would be, a lot of the same people are on the same, are working on this, and so we thought it'd be better to bring them to one meeting as opposed to several meetings.
Great.
So that's kind of why we kind of talked about it.
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a question. I know there's 3 on the one committee, and I don't know how many council members on the other committee. I take it, these are already public meetings, right? So there's no problem with open meetings or? Okay.
Correct, yes. And, we would be welcome for folks to come and deliver comments to that meeting as well. That sort of thing. It would continue to be a community effort. So,
fantastic. Thank you.
yes, so we're dubbing this the Ultra Super Committee.
Thank you for that, too.
You guys are killing me. I realize it's essentially a Monday, but okay. All right, so with that, I would entertain a motion to approve this.
You have somebody signed up to speak.
Oh, I thought that was for D.
It's 5C. No, not yet. It's D. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, yep, no problem. Mr. Lesser? Thank you. All those in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry. Who seconded?
It was the mic team again.
Now you can go. Okay. We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the motion is approved. So with that, I will work with Councilwoman Ortiz to appoint the rest of the committee members. On to item D, if the clerk would read.
D is action regarding the final report due on September 1, 2018 for the proposed traffic and pedestrian safety ordinance.
That's again one of those awkward calling on myself things. As we talked last time, the Traffic and Pedestrian Safety Committee has completed the Phase 1 work on the ordinance and had begun discussing what to do about the folks that are going to be affected by that. And our intent was to pull the work out of that committee and hand it to the new Ultra Super Committee, which we just created moments ago. So we have nothing further to report on that as we've completed the ordinance work, and I'll be excited to see the outcome of the new committee. With that, I'll stand for questions.
So do we, this is an action item here, are we needing to give you all an indefinite extension or something?
Well,
if you had a deadline,
I'll
or do you not have a deadline? I can't
No,
remember.
the new deadline would be within 90 days of this report, so that would be your December 4th governing body meeting, per the governing body rules.
So the separate
So per the
committees would
rules,
just...
wouldn't be a deadline. We would not set a deadline for you, so
It'd
you
be
just
on or
be the
before.
90-day
Yeah,
rotation.
and we would, the separate committees would just continue to report because we haven't shut them down in case we need to go back and work on some of that. So the separate committees would just continue to report back every 90 days that we're sort of in a holding pattern pending the Ultra Super Committee and the work that's going on there.
Okay, so no action is needed.
Correct.
Okay.
At least at this point, anyway.
The action really is,
Just providing the report.
the action actually is to provide the report. That's the action required, no approval.
Okay. There is one person signed up for public comment, Mr. Andy Fry. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. My name is Andy Fry. I'm here representing myself as a citizen and a member of the Complete Streets Advisory Committee. I was unable to attend the 2 previous meetings of this committee, and the 3rd meeting was canceled, so I wasn't able to attend that either. I'm here tonight because I'm concerned that the data that's used to justify this ordinance is not necessarily relevant data specifically to the safety concern as it relates to pedestrians. Being active on the Complete Streets Advisory Committee, I wasn't aware of the goings on of this committee actually until I saw that the 3rd meeting was canceled, nor had I heard of any public works or engineering or planning staff being involved since it was a safety matter as it relates to pedestrians. I was concerned because the data set shown in the different meetings that were held for the committee relates to crashes for all vehicles being cars and anything else. So if we were to look at the data sets of crashes, we have this largest data set that's crashes of all vehicles. And then within that data set, we have a smaller amount that involves cars and pedestrians. And even smaller than that yet is that it might involve panhandlers. So if the data is showing the top 10 crash sites in Topeka is looking at total crashes, we're not necessarily looking at the relevant spots for danger for pedestrians who might be panhandling. It seemed, being active in the Complete Streets Advisory Committee, I'm aware that there are relevant data sets available to the city through the traffic safety plan, and there's currently a consultant working on those sort of things, helping them delve deep into those sort of statistics to make our top, deadliest or most unsafe intersections and road stretches, to help address those. Overall, I'm just concerned with the validity of the ordinance based on that the basis of it is the data, and being that that seems unrelated and unfounded in its relationship to panhandling. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Just a brief comment on that. The reason that we selected the data set that we did for that is because an intersection with an increased crash rate generally indicates that any sort of driver distraction is not a good thing. And so out of abundance of caution, with the idea of preventing future accidents, we looked at all of the crash data as opposed to just a specific subset. I am interested to hear the outcome of what the consultant is working on, so that if we need to go back and revisit that, we can. But the idea was that any intersection where there's an increased risk of any kind of crash is one where we should probably not have folks distracting drivers. But that was just sort of the idea behind that, for good, bad, or other. That's where we arrived at what we did.
I just typically look for pedestrians to find panhandlers, so if there wasn't pedestrians present, I wouldn't assume that it would be a danger to them.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay. On to item E, if the clerk would read.
E is action regarding final committee report due on September 1, 2018 for the proposed camping ordinance.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We met again, and I've given out some more homework, so we need to probably meet another time to gather all the information. We had a report from the Homeless Task Force, and what they wanted to do is some of the other cities, they have a designated area for camping ground, and so they wanted to look into that. They had looked at some property that they believed, that they thought was the Missions, but we weren't real certain. So we're going to kind of look into that and bring that back. And they do have a video for us that they weren't able to provide. And so they're going to bring that back to us. So we're going to look and kind of see where we're at after we get several people that are going to come back and report to us. So I would say, again, this is something that we've looked at a lot of different areas and who it's going to affect. So it's not something that we want to do overnight, but we do want to continue to keep it rolling. I've had several calls on why we can't pass a temporary ordinance or an ordinance designated outlining NOTO or some of the other areas, as well as I believe we all received an invitation to go to, it was one of the officers, I'm trying to think of his name, along with some of the business owners to educate them. They wanted to kind of discuss what some of their options were. But that's kind of where we're at. What we'd like to do is, this is my report, give us another 90 days, and then hopefully come back and report again, and then continue with the special committee that we've drawn up. Things are looking really good. People are really concerned. A lot of people are really coming out and voicing their opinion. We did have Sergeant Clan who went out and he gave his report on how he went and talked to several of the homeless. And that was very interesting to see that they needed, a lot of the issues were driver's license and how they can obtain that. So he did come up with a draft that we gave to the legal department that would help them be identifiable if they were to be stopped by the police and stuff like that. So we are rolling. I don't know if Councilman Padilla wants to add anything, but we're rolling. It's just going to take us some time and some effort. And he's shaking his head yes?
Just briefly.
Okay. Not Antonio.
Yeah, not Antonio. Yeah, just briefly, again, I think that was something that was really enlightening, I think, and almost surprising that Sergeant Clam brought to that meeting with regards to a simple thing like identification, and how that was probably something we never even thought of as a group or as a committee. So it's important to have those different perspectives, I think, in trying to resolve this problem. And I appreciate the work that the entire group is doing, and to the chair, Councilwoman Ortiz, because I do think that there's no quick fix or silver bullet on this whole idea. And so, again, congratulations to the work that they've done so far, and encouragement that more people are getting involved and showing up at the committee meetings and voicing their concerns. And I think the more the better. So again, that's just a quick wrap up.
Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting that Stormontville, they were also with Sergeant Clam that went out. And I'm trying to think who the other lady was from their perspective of health. And so she wanted to say that Grace Med is on board and that they can get free medical assistance to them that in need. So that we're getting a lot of people on board, and we're grateful for that. And I want to continue to be to recognize that the Homeless Task Force has really kind of come together, and they wanted to meet again with some more suggestions, and they asked for more time. So we don't want to cut out any community partners because it takes all of us. So with that, we'd ask to come back in 90 days. Thank you.
Excellent. There are 3 people signed up for public comment for this. Mr. Troy Albright. Mr. Christopher Lahan. Okay. Richard Harrison. All right. Seeing those gentlemen are out here, we will move on to the non-action items, if the clerk would read.
A is discussion of amendments to the International Property Maintenance Code.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Governing body, tonight we bring back before you a discussion item related to the IPMC changes that were discussed a few months ago. During that time frame, over the last couple of months, we've had discussions, myself with Councilmember Hiller and also Deputy City Attorney Mary Feeney and Property Maintenance Division Director Mike Haugen. They've met a couple of times for around 5.5 or so hours, working with Councilmember Hiller regarding requested changes that she was looking at. I think from those discussions, we've gotten pretty close to the language that we require. In meeting with her today, as she reviewed the language, she has some concerns still, and I'll let her address those related to a portion of what have changed. But I think we've gotten much closer as a discussion item, and if there are desired changes by the governing body based on her items, we take those under advisement and then probably bring this back in a couple of weeks after this discussion in order to bring this to a final head. It's something that we really would like to see some changes with regards to the notification options that we have, the methods that we can use, and the timelines that are involved in here, and then also addressing some items related to the safe structures language that's included in that. So I guess I'll be ready for questions, as will other staff members, and be ready to stand for questions.
Ms. Hiller, do you want to say a few words about this?
Do you want to go ahead?
I just, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
I brought the resolution. We just added it. We didn't vote on it.
We did.
The resolution.
So was that voted on because we added it to?
Yes, the consent agenda.
Okay, because I thought we were just going to do it separately.
No.
That was my understanding.
Sorry.
To the end of the consent agenda.
So it's okay? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, whatever you are today. I want to start by just appreciating the time with Mary Feeney and with Mike Haugen. I would say, they can speak up, but that we worked as a team of 3 to look together at what the proposals had been, what the assumptions had been behind those, and how each of the pieces plays out in terms of actually management-wise, getting code compliance out there, getting notices done, getting people in, and so on. And we made, as city manager said, we made some really good progress. I will say that the last time we met was the 24th of August. and we got the pieces back late Wednesday night last week, so I got to it Thursday. We had city manager gone Friday and all of us gone Monday, so once again, here we come in, screeching in for a landing. But I do hope that maybe I could make it somewhat simple for you. I mean, overall, you all have looked at the drafts that have come along. It is complicated, and some of what you've seen is new language typed in that is just like what got stricken out, and that was a deputy mayor's or deputy city attorney's attempt to not confuse you with double strikeouts or whatever. So we put some wording back along the way as we worked. Overall, as Mary Feeney told us at first, the goal that she had, and again she can speak up, was to help with the delivery issues, service delivery and delivery issues, and then in terms of demolitions and unsafe structures, to make sure, because the state law does have some specific procedures for that, and the hearing procedure is different than the hearing procedure for that other family of violations, that we clarify that. And both of those needed to be done. She further had felt that going ahead and putting more detail in terms of alternative forms of delivery, how we could do it, was something that was worth putting into the code so people could see it. And what I would say in terms of those goals is that we did some work over those 3 sessions, but that's pretty well done. It was really great in the beginning and follows through. But there were some misunderstandings and some kind of run-in with some things that caused a lot of discussion. To try and keep it simple, you've got 2 ordinances in front of you. One is changes to the property maintenance code, the main things that we usually see, weeds and housing and so on. And then the second one is specifically about demolitions, basically. It's the, quote, unsafe structures that in the state's view is demolitions. And so talking about the first one, the property maintenance code one, I would say that in my view, and you'll see lots of tweaking, there were issues besides these main delivery issues that got worked around, but I think you can see those, that the delivery issues are pretty well set. The legalities are pretty well set. I would just draw your attention to 3 areas just to think about. These are areas that we didn't really get discussed with us at first. Probably didn't have to have language changes, but they are procedural that do make a difference. One is we have added various delivery options for notices and orders. There's nothing different than the options we had, really, but part of the discussion out of that has been that if somebody, the staff says that we would still send 90% of them by certified mail like we have before. We've always been able to go back in and do a personal service on somebody at their business or at their home and so on. Those things have been tightened up. Some of the things, there were some carryovers that required publishing or publishing twice that have been moved out. So anything we don't have to do is out of there in terms of time and expense. But the idea of, for all of us on the street, people want to know what's going to happen or how much time am I supposed to get and so on. It might be that we really need to ask staff, and city manager and I have talked about it, and he's fine with that, is that we need to develop some standard operating procedures or SOPs within the department. We don't have to do those, but we need to be made aware of them so that we understand when the certified mail would go. If the staff is going to send a first-class letter, is that in lieu of that certified mail or is it in addition to it? If they're going to personally serve, do they always try and do a certified mail first? Or if it's someone that they know, are they going to do that right out of the chute? So that we've got an idea. We get the calls when people are upset or they don't know. So what is the SOP? What do you expect to have the routines be from here forward? And if people have questions, I think we need to ask them before we pass it, just in case there's language that would make a difference. The second thing that I would draw your attention to is that in the code right now, there's some defaults in there in terms of dates to cure and dates to file appeals. Those dates to cure or the dates for filing appeal is 10 days from the date of service. The other complaints, pretty much, weeds is typically 10 days from the date of service, and other things say 60 days, up to 60 days from the date of service. The staff recommendation has been that we cut that loose and we no longer state the days in the policy. Functionally, what the staff's feedback in our discussion was is they don't plan to change much of anything about what they're doing. It would just change the words in the ordinance at this juncture. My suggestion would be that we all want the consistency. There are things that the staff could have done before within that 60-day parameter, and they have before and still have the opportunity to give extensions. There are circumstances that they do make judgment calls on, and they have that authority. For us to think through whether, again, my suggestion has been if we're going to do it, we need to realize that there'll be questions. People will wonder, well, how much time are they giving for this or that or the other thing? I've had a couple rounds of questions with them, and I have had answers on probably 2/3 of them, but there are some pretty standard things that occur that for citizens and for the staff and for us, it would be better to have some standard dates, knowing that they can always make an exception if there's a need to. So we don't have that SOP. One of the things that's missing from so they've got weeds in there. State law allows as little as 5 days. And in the first communication that we got, the word was that the staff wanted to do that. At this point, the staff's word to me in an email is that they want to stick with 10 days as a minimum for pretty much anything. That makes sense to me. Even if it's weeds or nuisance, and even if it's somebody we're sick of, they need time to get the notice and do the abatement themselves so that we're not spending taxpayer money to do it. But that's a conversation that we all get hit with, I think, that we need to be aware of. A policy that we had for years in the city was that if it was a renter-occupied structure, they would only give 30 days within that 60, because state law has a lot of 30-day notices for tenants. That's not happening right now, and as much as we have talked about renter-occupied structures and needing to deal with that, it would seem that that should be added. And I would point out that the state law right now says that any rental property needs to be up to code before it's even rented out. So that shouldn't be an issue to have a pretty short turnaround. We also run into issues with roofs and exterior painting, because if it's the middle of the winter or even in the spring, 60 days is not enough time. And so they can give extensions, but something that's routine would be helpful to us. To us all. So think about what those standards would be, where you've run into confusion. If there's some feedback for city manager even before we vote, I think that would be helpful. And third, and this one I really do want you to think through. In the past, all those notices have said that you can ask for your appeal or your dates that you're required to cure have been within X number of days from the date service was effected. The proposal in what you have before you is to switch and instead set a date certain. Now, realize the letters will all go out at the same time, but they'll get received by people at different times. They will all have dates certain in them, so some people will get less time than other people based on when they get their letters. And so the staff is already thinking through, putting a buffer for mailing into whatever they're doing. But from a management point of view, one of the concerns that we have simply talked about, I don't claim to have the solution, is, well, are you going to spend more time going back and forth, changing dates and negotiating dates with people who were on vacation or who didn't get a notice in time, versus going back to date certain, to the date requirement based on the date people got their letters. It appeared, as we talked about it, that it hadn't, they were just trying to speed stuff up, but if somebody's going to go to court, we have got to document when service was affected anyway. And it turns out the staff has a really great form to do that. But thinking about the difference between just changing it each time versus having the notices be from the date of service. We're being asked to vote to cut that loose. So just keep those in mind. I don't have solutions, and I don't know if you were aware of it, so just wanted to raise those issues on that one today. Otherwise, the legalities are technically in order if you want to go with what's there. At least it appears that way to me at this point. On the unsafe structures ordinance, the desire was to make sure that we had in simple terms, was to make sure that it was a standalone piece and that the procedures were clear. And they did need to be changed from what we had in there to make sure it was synced up and clear with the state law. There was a misunderstanding, however, at first when this ordinance was proposed, and that was that when you say unsafe structures, that was only demolition-bound properties where that threshold of if it's going to cost more than 30% of the future value, the reconstruction value, then it's eligible to go down the demolition path. There were a variety of things, and you can see them already in what you have in front of you. Section 108, it really deals with just Section 108 and 110 from the ordinance that we have. Section 108 was a section that talked about unsafe structures and equipment and identified them, defined them, provided the mechanism to abate, and otherwise address those issues. In that bucket are really three different sub-buckets. One is a property that's unsafe temporarily, let's say. Maybe there was a fire, maybe the utilities are off, maybe something happened that makes it, and it's a judgment call always for the staff as to whether they tell people they have to move out or let them stay. But it's hopefully temporary, and it doesn't meet that threshold on the structural of the 30% rule. The other thing that's in there is equipment. If there's equipment that's so dangerous that the staff would want to go in and say, you can't use that equipment, placard it and say you can't use it. And the third is ones that are bad enough that would be demolition eligible. That 108 umbrella needs to be there, I would argue. I mean, we walked through all of that to cover all three of those buckets. And then you had Section 110 that pulled the demolitions out and did the specific language that was needed for demolitions. We uncovered in conversation that there had been confusion at first. The first proposal we got was to package everything that was in 108 and redefine its process under that demolition. The thing about demolitions is you have to automatically give people a hearing. The hearing officer has powers of actually quasi-judicial rather than just an appeals officer like they do in the other hearings. The only options that were in there at first were to either repair it or demolish it. So we really went through that because we needed to leave the 108 pieces and then go ahead and really make it clear on demolitions. Somehow in this, we were working on this at our last meeting. That language we were going to make sure all the 108 stuff was still clear, and that didn't happen it was still in there. It didn't happen in what you got today. So we need a little time to make sure we get that, at least something that brings it all back. There was a little piece within that had to do with using the word condemned. The word condemned is listed a number of times in Section 108. Assistant City Attorney Feeney said she just didn't like the word and wasn't comfortable with it and was wanting to work it out. When we left off on the 24th of August, the issue was, well, we might not like the word condemned, and it sounds kind of harsh, but it is the word that gets used when you placard a structure and say nobody can live here or you can't use this. It's been condemned, and people get the picture. So the way we left it off on the 24th was, well, we need to either leave it or we need to come up with a word that will work well both in the policy and on those placards, and we'll have to change all our placards. Or we might have to if the word condemned needs to be linked into the ordinance. That was not resolved when we left it off. So I would encourage you actually to go on the city's website where the code as it is today, there are so many strikeouts and changes. I would encourage you to go into code compliance on the website, at which point you can read the code the way it is today, kind of section by section in order, and see what it says today, and then hold this other one up against it and consider the changes, not only technically for other people, but it needs to flow. It needs to make sense so somebody can read it and understand what's there. And I would ask you to do that. I will continue to work because of that late time in the council meeting coming up. I haven't met back with Mary yet myself, so we'll do that. But I wanted to bring to your attention those issues for 108 and 110. Also, the last piece about 110, the demolition piece, it's well written as far as I can see, and will do just fine. The assistant city attorney was proposing, if you recall, to create a new section outside of the property maintenance code to have that separate. At this point, now that we've done the work that we've done, I think it needs to come right back in. The language that you've got in front of you eliminates the language we have right now for demolition in section 110. And I'm hopeful that we can work it out to put that replacement language right back in there so that when people read this code, they'll see it. It'll be there. It's linked in a couple of different ways with other language. So hopefully that made some sense. I really, really appreciate certainly city manager's time and that time of Mary Feeney and Mike Cowgan, because I think we all had some really good discussions. I think the property maintenance part is pretty close just with those operational things, and then hopefully we can fix the legalities on the other.
Thank you.
If there are questions, I can try and field them, or I know everybody else is here.
I have two quick questions. One, I know that there was some discussion about how to serve resident agents for out-of-state landlords. Did that get resolved as part of all this?
I haven't worried about that one in a long time, so
And
Mike
if
is
not,
shaking his head
it's not a
no.
big deal to have an answer tonight, but just as before we vote on that, I'd be interested to know if we've solved the problem where we can't get a hold of an out-of-state landlord and get them to solve something. I know there's been some discussion about a resident agent, if that's available, but
Mary may want to address it, but there is personal service in there to businesses and to individuals, and that can be done locally. It can be done by hiring process servers, and it can be done interstate. We don't have that many that we need to do it, and
well, we have a significant number of out-of-state landlords. So
Not really.
one of the concerns that's been brought up is if somebody doesn't live here, then we have no authority to bring them here if they don't solve a problem. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll take a look at the issue related to the resident agent delivery and how we're making contact, what our current process is, what we're studying, if we're looking at making changes, and report back to you rather than suppose.
Okay, wonderful. My only other comment was if we could sort it out, volunteer trees and shrubs. I know there's some ambiguity in that. Again, not something that has to be answered tonight, but if we're cracking open the code to take a look at it, we might as well fix areas where we've had some confusion in the past.
That is a future discussion item that we're looking at, rather than trying to lump that in with this discussion. This is trying to keep this contained. Other issues related to the IPMC and relates to vegetation is something that we'll have as a future discussion.
And maybe this is a good time for you to talk about, you're rolling out the rapid improvement process, and, because we have this huge overarching code that some folks think there's significant problems with, other folks think there's it's fine in places. And could you just spend a couple of minutes talking about how you're trying to work with your various teams to make sure that we have what we need so that we can solve the problems we have in the community?
Right, so we're in the middle of motion to start to the point where we get trained facilitators to be able to do rapid process improvement, exercise events, whatever you want to call them. One of those events that we obviously need to study is the issue of this particular issue related to notices and how we do code enforcement. And so we'll break that process down and determine if we're making the right steps, analyze how we're doing business, and determine what changes may be required. If nothing else, I mean, we validate the parts that work and make changes to those that don't. And so we're on a glide path to be able to, hopefully, if we continue on track, we'll be ready in January to start doing events, to be able to start analyzing our processes. And so that's definitely, and this is one of those that we've already discussed that we'll be in the process of analyzing.
Sounds like next year is going to be very exciting.
It will be. I think that it's going to be very good for us as staff to have a tool that we can utilize to analyze the processes and then come back and show the governing body what we're doing and how we're doing it and how we've improved it.
So you'll be able to take an individual incident where something didn't quite work the way we think it should, run it through this process, identify what didn't necessarily go correct, and then we can take corrective action in the code as necessary to solve that? Is that correct?
Well, actually kind of a little more proactive in the fact that we'll study the process as it currently exists today, determine what's working and what's not, so that when we're doing the process out in the field, we're using a process that's the most streamlined and best process that can be done.
Wonderful.
And so then, obviously, we analyze based on different events that occur and determine whether changes need to be made in that process at a later date based on how we've changed the process after the event.
Fantastic. Thank you. With that, other questions or comments? Did you have one, Mr. Ortiz?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
I do have one more comment. Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
No.
As we look at this, we would appreciate any feedback you have. We're going to look at bringing this back in 2 weeks rather than in one for action to allow us to look at this. You know, for us, we looked at how we've done it, received Councilwoman Hiller's comments. We'll take those and look and analyze and then provide you a report as to try to work through, determine the best location and how to solve these, making sure that we've got the ordinance in the best form that we feel it should be as far as our operations, and then present it to you for consideration.
Ms. Ortiz.
I'm sorry. On the mailing part that you just said that you would get back with us, can you do that this week? Can that be done?
Okay. Yes.
Because I think I did ask about the state, what state statute says. And I was real interested in that. And I'll try to get with Mary this week as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions, comments? Ms. Hiller.
Only make one. I wanted to give you the highlights of where I saw things still hanging, but you'll see where things have been stricken out and put back and so on. But I think all of us, one way or another, get enough questions that this issue of service and some of the other items that came and went are important. So I hope you can read it through and ask comments between. And thank you, City Manager, for the time.
Excellent. We'll move on to the announcements. The clerk would read the next agenda.
Preliminary agenda for the 11th, we have one proclamation for the mayor. It's Constitution Week. We have a presentation for Encore Gen Prize. We have a couple board appointments. One's to the Board of Mechanical Examiners. The other is the Topeka Board of Zoning Appeals. We have a zoning ordinance for zoning change located at 304 and 308 Southwest Van Buren. We have another zoning change for properties located around Southwest 6th Avenue and Topeka Boulevard. And then we have the utility real estate liens ordinance and the, well, it would be 2 weeks. We had the ordinances for the IPMC, but those will be 2 weeks from now for discussion. And that's it.
Wonderful. Well, I only have two things to mention. First is my youngest brother, Kevin, has returned from Afghanistan. He was deployed there in the Seabees, And I just want to publicly thank him for his service and tell him how thrilled we are to have him back. We had a wonderful family reunion over the weekend, and we are blessed that he has come back to us safe and sound and in good spirits. The only other update I will offer is my lovely bride tells me our baby is the size of a hedgehog. That sounds a bit prickly. Why the app selected that particular animal, I don't know, but that might explain her irritability of late. So with that, I will go to the city manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, governing body. Obviously, I was not here at the last governing body meeting at the training with the Bloomberg Harvard Leadership Institute. Excellent training, lot to learn. We're looking to pass on some of that information to staff through training in the future. And then also, I'll provide you a summary in the next couple of weeks. It's been a little hectic after being back, but I do owe you that. I think it would be good for you to hear some of the types of things that they were training for us. Pretty impressive event with lots of good case studies they reviewed, and I think that it'll be very useful going forward. So very happy to have received that training.
Mr. Henderson.
Nothing for me tonight, thanks.
I just wanted to congratulate the zoo on opening up Camp Cowabunga. I was there for the grand opening ribbon cutting the other day, and it's a fantastic facility. I would encourage everybody to go check it out as soon as you can, because those giraffes are there, and they're going to be getting bigger, and they're adorable right now, and they're so small. So everybody go to the zoo if you haven't been lately.
Mr. Lesser? Ms. Hiller? Ms. Claire? I'm sorry. Sorry. Read her name, looked at you.
She's very clear.
That's right. By the way, Ms. Claire isn't feeling well tonight, so clearly she's not here. Okay, that's a joke, people. Come on, you're killing me.
You just got the answer to the hedgehog thing, so, you know. I'm the best.
Oh, my. All right. Yes. Clearly, everybody had a fantastic weekend. Moving on to public comment. Teresa Nguyen.
Okay. Hello, everyone. As he just said, my name is Teresa Nguyen. I am Dominique White's mother. In case everyone doesn't remember, Dominique was a young man that was murdered by the Topeka police officers, Justin Mackey and Michael Cruz, September 28th, 2017. Just 24 short days from a year ago. He is not just the incident in September, and we will not allow him to be remembered as the incident in September. He has a name, and I'd appreciate it if everyone would say his name, Dominique White. I'm here to talk to you guys about a few things today. First off, I want to tell you a little bit about that day. It was just a normal day. I got up, got around, went to work. Got to work about 8 o'clock like normal. Everybody was there chit-chatting about the upcoming weekend. No big deal. Started my day. Then about 9:25, I got a call. It was from Dominique's girlfriend. I was on the other line, on my office phone. So I silenced her call, and I just thought, I'll call you back. I'll call her back in a few minutes when I get a break. But I didn't get that chance. She called me right back. So I knew it was important. I rushed off my office line and answered her call. Oh my God. It was the most gut-wrenching call any mother could ever imagine getting. She called me screaming and crying, and I couldn't understand anything she was saying. I knew something was horribly wrong. I had to stay calm. I had to try to calm her down while my coworkers were looking on, wondering what was going on. At the time, it was all happening, I thought I was calm. I'm outside. And that my coworkers wouldn't know wouldn't pick up on anything. Little did I realize the gut-wrenching howl coming from me. As I realized she was telling me that my son, my baby boy, my youngest, had been shot. I don't know how I even comprehended anything that she was saying, but I was able to ask her, where are you? And she said, Ripley Park. I asked, where is Meek? And she said, they're loading him in the ambulance. I needed to know where to go, so I asked her, where are they taking him? She didn't know. She just watched him shot in the back 3 times, and they wouldn't talk to her. They wouldn't tell her anything. They wouldn't even tell her where he was going. So I told my boss I had to go, and he wouldn't let me drive. He drove me there. That was the longest ride ever. I never thought we would ever get there. And the whole time, riding there, I was calling my husband, my other children, to try to tell them the little bit I knew that he was going to the hospital. I didn't know which one, but we were going to start a Stormont. And at that time, I didn't know who had shot him. I walked into the hospital, and it was horror. On top of the horror I was already going through. There was 4 or 5 officers standing in front of the emergency entrance to go back into the emergency room. They were so horrid looking, so mean, so gruff, so evil.
Ma'am.
With their arms crossed.
Your time has expired. Would you like some additional time?
If you don't mind,
How much would you
I
like?
have a couple more pages. I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about that day. Tell you
We're
a
happy
little-
to let you. Do you need 3 minutes, 2 minutes?
Motion to extend 3 minutes. Second.
For a second? All those in
So
favor?
then I'll skip past the rest of that day
Hold on.
What?
and tell you a little bit about him as quickly as I can.
I'm sorry, hold on one moment.
We have to vote.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. We're bound to parliamentary procedures, and I apologize.
I'm sorry, I've never done this before.
Oh, you're doing a fantastic job.
We have 7 yes.
7 having voted yes, you may continue for 3 minutes.
So that was just the beginning of our nightmare that will never end. He was the funniest guy you would ever meet. He had the sharpest wit and always had the best comeback for anything. He was able to talk to anybody about anything and help them through their struggles. His smile was the biggest smile you'd ever seen. He had the biggest dimples, the kind that just made you smile when you saw them. He had the brightest, most beautiful eyes when he smiled, and the biggest head of curly, springy curls. Okay, I'm gonna skip past all that. He was a protector of anyone he loved, especially the women in his life. Chivalry was not dead with him. He told me not long before he was murdered that it was his job to protect his sisters, Tricia, Jessica, Justice, and JJ. And that he hadn't been doing such a good job the last few years, but he was going to work on that. He would tease us, all the women, about everything. He had special things he'd teach each of us about. He always teased me about being old. And I told him he's what made me old. He had 2 lifetime best friends, his older brothers, Justin and Joshua. They grew up side by side, the awesome threesome. Growing up, just the 3 of them, they didn't have very many friends outside of each other. The twins weren't like other brothers, older brothers that didn't want their younger brother tagging along. He was always right there on their heels, even through adulthood. Until just the last few years, they didn't venture too far away from each other. He was the spitting image of his father, Kelly. You didn't have to know them both. If you knew one and you just heard the other one speak or saw him, you would know that was Dominic's father or Kelly's son. He had 4 of the most beautiful little boys who were in turn just like their dad as a spitting image. It amazes me how all 4 of them look just like him. TW and JS are 14 and 11 years old. They have some awesome memories of Dominic to hold on to him with. TW is a little angry, as I'm sure you can imagine. JS just misses him and wants him back. The two little guys, JK, who is just 6 and autistic, and NC, who is just 4, are too young to really remember him. We don't know what JK knows or remembers. NC knows his daddy. He knows him in any picture and knows his voice if he hears it. And all he ever asks is, when my daddy comes back, can I tell him this or show him that? He doesn't yet understand. So I really just came tonight to ask you, to tell you a little bit. There's more, but to tell you a little bit and then to invite you all to Justice for Dominic White 1-year anniversary block party and cookout that we are having at Ripley Park on September 29th from noon to 5. We're going to have a lot of different agencies and groups there. YWCA, the Poor People's Campaign, BLM, Moms Demand Action, Stand Up for Life, and voters registration. We want to bring some things to that area that for people that don't know how to reach out, how to register to vote, other resources for them that they may not know how to reach out to. We're going to have food and games for the kids. And
Ma'am, your time has expired.
I'm sorry?
Your time has expired. So if you could make a few closing remarks.
Please come. Please come.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate your time. There being no further public comments, we have a need for one executive session. If the city attorney can give the parameters.
The motion is to recess into executive session for a period of time not to exceed 20 minutes for consultation with the city's legal counsel to discuss attorney-client privilege matters related to contract negotiations as justified by KSA 75-4319B2. In order to aid the discussion, the following individuals should be present: members of the governing body, City Manager Brent Trout, Deputy City Manager Doug Gerber, Police Chief Bill Cochran, Administrative and Financial Services Director Nikki Lee, Human Resources Director Jackie Russell, Senior Assistant City Attorney Catherine Walter, and myself. No action is anticipated to be taken when the open meeting resumes in the governing body chambers.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Councilwoman Ortiz, second by Councilmember Cohen. All those in favor, please vote yes. 20 minutes, yes.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the motion is approved. The executive session will begin when the room is clear. For an additional 15 minutes under the same parameters. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Not to exceed 15 minutes. Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. We will go into executive session when the room is clear. There is a need to extend the session for an additional 10 minutes under the same parameters previously mentioned.
So moved.
Motion and second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. We will return to executive session when the room is cleared. Executive session has ended with no action taken. There being no further business before the body, we are adjourned.
Good job.